long time, jump master, I guess, technically. And so we just kind of knew people who were doing it. And it was one of those, you kind of just, you go up there and you know a guy who knows a guy and said, oh yeah, you should get your license. And you think, oh yeah, why not? A couple weekends, be quick. I'm never going to become a skydiver. But sure enough, it's it only takes 25 jumps to get your license, and then you got a little piece of paper. You can go jump out of an airplane anywhere in the world.
Huh.
And so I expected, get that sign off and have your laughs and move on with life. But we got way into it. Turns out it's super challenging, and there's a whole lot of disciplines within skydiving that you can pursue. And so there was a lot of really cool people for one. But it was also just it was a neat challenge that sort of choose your own adventure, and it's a good way to exercise, your brain and your body at the same time. So yeah, I'm as surprised as you are. Not something I'd expected to get into. So the 30-second background on me is aerospace engineer by training. Went to school at the U of A in Tucson, got out immediately. It was 2010, so right in the middle of war and terrors. Went to work immediately in Yuma with Navair on a handful of different UAV programs, and ended up specializing in control systems. Um, let's see. So fast forward, we were working at a small engineering firm, and we sort of saw this opportunity to solve, ironically, a logistics problem with fixed wing UAVs, more so than a technical capability problem. Logistics problem being that fixed wing UAV back in those days required a lot of launch and recovery apparatus, whether it's a full runway, so you're restricted to where you could operate, or you had to bring a launch and recovery system. And the example I like to use is one of the prevalent tactical ISR airplanes at the time was a 55-pound airplane, but it required 2 semi trucks worth of equipment to launch and recover it. So logistically, that's a big problem for the military. So like I said, we were working on controls. We were pretty good at programming autopilots to do special things, and we saw an opportunity to utilize kind of the emerging multi-rotor trend to launch and recover fixed-wing UAVs. And so that's kind of what we became known for, was airplanes that could lift off vertically, take off into forward flight, and then go do normal fixed-wing endurance missions. So that's the quick background. That was a company called Latitude Engineering. That was sold to L3 in 2018, and spent a short time at L3 after that, and then went out on my own. So there's a lot of really cool programs out there in the world that are still doing great work with fixed wing airplanes, and was fortunate enough to get a call from a few of them, just looking for controls help. And so that's what I do by day, and by night, I try to build things. I look at the big problems that I see firsthand in my world, and think, if I had the opportunity to solve this, and ideally to do it in a different way, the better way, that's kind of answering the mail on some of the issues that the current alternatives are offering, what would I do? And so, two of those examples are GPS denied navigation for UAVs that you and I have talked about, and then counter UAS systems. So that's the quick and dirty of where I came from and where I am today.
Thanks. You mentioned the smaller fixed wings before you guys made one that can lift off by itself. Is that just in my limited experience, is more like a Raven, where there's a whole bunch of extra equipment required to get it off the ground and get it recovered. But that was like a hand launched one, maybe this large.
Yeah, Raven's a good example. It's certainly not the most egregious offender of ground launched support equipment or ground support equipment required
Yeah.
to operate the system. But thinking more of like the Shadow system, the Scan Eagle, that required large trailer hauled launchers, nets or cranes or what have you to recover the airplane without a runway. And then, of course, every iteration in between, and most of the systems that I ended up working on just went back to normal, takeoff and land with wheels, which was great because airplanes and runways work together for a reason. But now you're stuck, needing a runway. So if you're a ship, for instance, that's real hard to do. So that was that was kind of the start of looking at the problem from, our little corner of the world and saying, how can we think about this different? And that was, ultimately how we ended up developing VTOL systems. I think there was a misconception that our goal was to create a VTOL airplane, and it wasn't that at all. Our goal was to delete the launch and recovery equipment. So that was kind of the mindset that he took forward into the new counter UAS system, and then the GPS denied navigation system.
Gotcha. Yeah, you alluded to a little bit about this already, but what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah. So typical day, I'm work from home. I think I'm the only person in the world that doesn't prefer that. I miss being in the office. I miss working with a team. It's great having the flexibility to work from home, but yeah, I've always firmly believed that you'll never be as good on your own as you will be with a good team, and so I'm very much looking forward to getting back together with a group of people that can go push capability forward. So but for right now, work from home. So kind of classic, wake up, make your coffee, go check email in your PJs, eventually go brush your teeth and do your hair, and then get to work. So I've got a handful of clients right now that doing some flight controls development for. Things are changing in the tactical UAV world. Autopilots are improving. So work to be done there to, make sure that we retain a lot of the capability that was developed during war and terror, which is fairly substantial. And then just, help these companies continue to check the box on some of the hard parts so that they can do new and innovative things with the rest of the system.
The other day when we were talking, you alluded to this a little bit, but what are some of the industry trends that you're seeing right now? We talked a little bit about what has happened in the past. What are you seeing at this moment? Is there an inflection point happening where something is about to do a tangent, or is that already going on?
That's a, that's a super good and interesting question. I think the word trend implies that the change is happening. And
Sure.
the trend that I would point out is actually a change in conversation more than a change in activity.
Hmm.
And that one's it's obvious. It's the shift away from expensive, exquisite systems to affordable mass. And that's a big deal. And it's a big deal not because we can't do it, or people say that the U.S. isn't equipped for it. It's a big deal because it's changing mindset, and it's going to be a huge disruptor to how the current defense industrial base does business. The idea of having large prime contractors that can stand up and build on a 10-year cost plus program to get, pick on B2 because it's cool and expensive, to build a B2, that is a completely broken concept in the new world of affordable mass, where instead of bringing a bunch of specialization into a large vertically integrated manufacturer with a lot of tribal knowledge and built-in capability, the the goal for being able to compete in the near future is to do essentially the opposite of that, undo all that work that we did sort of through the Cold War, creating these James Bond systems, I like to call them, and say, look, yeah, we're still going to need whiz bang stuff. We're still going to need stealth, and we're going to need directed energy, and we're going to need all the really high tech stuff that's coming out of the labs. But that's not going to be enough, and it's not going to be enough because in a war of numbers, you can only build so many B2s. You
Mhm.
can only have so many nuclear powered submarines and things like that. In a war of numbers, you need also to have numbers. And that's something that the US isn't historically good at. So, um, fortunately, the conversation is happening. It's happening at all the levels. It's happening in the right direction. But as of right now, it's just a conversation. So I'd hesitate yet to call it a trend, but it is absolutely the way that everybody is looking towards and beginning to march to. So
Okay, yeah, that's a completely different concept than what I'm used to. Yeah. So, okay, with that trend, then the way that you're able to operate with your company, it would seem like your benefits right now are agility, the ability to pivot quickly because you're not trying to recalibrate an aircraft carrier of a company to try to accommodate some nuance, right? You're a little more agile. You got speed. Um, yeah, and you can see things like that and feed into it and pivot if you need to very quickly. That's my guess. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the more important aspect of that agility is recognizing that it's not just an armor and it's not just thin air. It's a million of me. There is an entire industry of small, agile, uh, you know, quick companies that can do these kind of new, or I hesitate to even say innovative, because a lot of the work we need to do isn't necessarily even innovative. It's just work that we need to do. But to to steal your words, turning an aircraft carrier of a large prime is it's turning an aircraft carrier. You don't get to just do that overnight. What you can do is mobilize many, many small, lightweight um, companies like ours
Hmm.
to to go fill that gap. And in aggregate, that is a massive capability.
And it seems like it'd be way more resilient too, as a system, right? Or an ecosystem, really. It'd be way more resilient because, and it's not, yeah, one problem at a prime that can't move quickly enough, but you have 200 organizations similar to yours that can all flex, change, pivot, do what they need to do to solve problems. Okay, that's a totally different mindset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think expanding on that a little bit further,
Yeah.
it's just only a conversation that's top of mind because it's one that we're having on one of these projects that I'm working right now, is also just designing away from that kind of single source manufacturer. So
Mhm.
aside from engineering companies, the U.S. manufacturing and industrial base is kind of part and parcel to how we are going to build an ability to respond at scale. If we continue to build systems that require some specialized technique. So let's say that you build a special bearing that requires a very specific alloy that is a very specific hardening that has to be done at, there's one or two or three companies in the country that can even achieve uh, that that specification.
Mhm.
Then it doesn't matter how cool your new system is. Those three companies, which become two for no reason, are now your bottleneck. And so your delivery time just went on whatever that special bearing is, just went from, I could call and order one from McMaster Car, get it a week later, to now I hope we get one in 6 to 12 months. So
Mhm.
that type of design shift, along with the idea of distributing our engineering capability, is also super important, because we have to be thinking in terms of manufacturing, not just in terms of how to make, the fastest plane or the most powerful missile.
Sure. Oh yeah. You got to manufacture at scale. You got economies of scale working on your behalf sometimes, or at least trying to. Um, oh, that's such a different mindset. Wow. Yeah, from the GWAT era. So, as you're in that scenario right now, obviously you're working on a lot of different projects and a lot of cool things. What is working well for you in your company right now, and what is frustrating to you right now?
Yeah, super good question. I think it's probably easier to start with the frustration, and this one's obvious. So um, it's obvious because of sort of the conversation we just had. Is we're shifting towards, and we're designing a defense industrial base that is distributed and agile, and by definition moves fast. But the rest of the government still isn't. The rest of the government is still an aircraft carrier. So
Mhm.
there's a whole bunch of us that are really pumped about this new direction, ready to step up, ready to take off sprinting, and you can't, because it doesn't matter how ready you are if the rest of the system isn't. And so right now the limitation is, it's quickly no longer becoming industry, and it's becoming um, government acquisition process. Fortunately, again, to give credit where it's due, every conversation you hear coming out of the Pentagon is recognizing this. And there is what I think to be, or what sounds to be, really good action being taken to solve that problem on the government side. But that underlines the frustration, is that government and industry need to be in lockstep for any of this sort of big idea change of how we're going to do business to work. And it's going to be slower than anybody likes.
I can identify with that. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. It does seem like there are movements happening to streamline that a little bit and kind of take it out of being an aircraft carrier mode. Yeah. So that's a great frustration. What's working well for you guys?
So some of the things, and maybe this is speaking a little bit more broadly,
Yeah,
some of the things that I would say working well for the industry and small, we'll say non-traditional defense contractors,
sure.
is a shift in interest from private capital.
Mm,
We'll pick on Anduril because they're a great example. They're in the news a lot, and they're doing great work. Um, these companies that are coming out of the ideas and minds of individuals and being able to demonstrate that there is a viable market in doing business with the government is really interesting and helpful. And so to contrast that, in my experience, going back to kind of 2010, 2015, if you were a young engineering company, a small engineering company,
hmm
there was one path for funding, and it's subcontracting to a prime. You're not going to win a prime contract. You're not going to go convince a VC to give you $100 million. You're going to go convince some prime that already has, a multi-million, multi-billion dollar IDIQ to sub you as a supplier for something. Uh, Having an alternative to that single path to funding is really neat to see. Um, I know we're talking about the positives. I would say that one frustration there, what's the opposite of a silver lining? Put a dark lining on a silver cloud. It's cool that VCs are getting excited about it. I've been extremely personally frustrated at seeing the things that are getting funded and things that are not getting funded. Um, and to just kind of elaborate on that, and then I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah.
The frustration there are big bets being made on what I will call sort of the Silicon Valley model with very little to no technical due diligence. And this is like I said, it's a conversation for another time and another beer, but
Okay.
um, I've I have seen firsthand a handful of companies that have received substantial private funding because they are claiming to be able to essentially violate the laws of physics. And one of the quotes that I heard a long time ago, I don't remember where it came from, but it stuck with me is, good innovation violates assumptions, not physics. And what we're seeing now is
I'm gonna keep that.
yeah, you have this idea out of keep blaming Silicon Valley. You have this idea where, if you find this 19-year-old Stanford dropout and you just give them $100 million and
Mhm.
let their imagination run wild, you are going to knock it out of the park, or you could knock it out of the park. Uh, and I actually kind of blame the fact that that works for what we're seeing now, because what
Mhm.
you have is you have this private capital world where these these moonshot companies are absolutely obliterating the rest of their portfolio. The entire portfolio is driven by making this one huge bet. And so what you get as a result of that is VCs and other private capital groups going around and looking for the most dramatic, outlandish, the most impossible sounding claims, and saying, okay, well, that's sure a moonshot. Uh, we're going to put money on it because if it hits,
Mhm.
it will be our portfolio. And that's true. But there's a slight distinction between all the software that Silicon Valley developed for decades and hardware, which is there are certain things which are physically impossible. You cannot create free energy, for instance. And so if a 21-year-old dropout comes to you and claims that they have a machine that's creating free energy, I understand why they're getting investment. If that were to hit, it would be worth, a gajillion dollars. But
Mhm.
there's just no work going into checking whether or not these ideas are violating physics. So, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now, but
No,
that
that's
is
good.
that is the good and the bad of seeing private capital kind of showing up in uh, in our industry.
So it's turning more into Wall Street bets, right?
Great way of putting it. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
To the moon.
completely outlandish moonshots. And you're right. If it doesn't work, it'll be a gajillion dollars. But if it doesn't, instead of going with a firm that iterates scientifically in a proven process and is going to incrementally improve over time, that's not attractive enough, I guess, to VCs right now.
Well, and I would. I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody or everybody
Yeah.
who's trying to charge stuff. I think the important distinction is, I just want to see a check mark next to a box that says, "Does this violate the laws of physics?" No, then go for it. Throw as much money at as you want. Maybe we'll get there.
Yeah.
But again, if you're trying to create a free energy machine, or a handful of UAV startups that are creating airplanes that are physically impossible, um, let's just check that box and say no. We can't violate fit. We can violate expectations. We can't violate physics. And then save that $100 million for somebody whose claims are actually possible.
Yeah.
So, end rant.
That's hilarious. A bit more into the technical side. The other day when we were talking, you mentioned solving the problem of GPS denied areas, right? You explained that to me pretty well, and I appreciate it. I'm a knuckle dragger, so sometimes it takes a second to figure out exactly what that is. Um, that would seem, with the model that you were describing there, to economically win, basically, right? Because um, on the battlefield or in a contested environment like that, guided things no longer having access to their GPS due to jamming is going to be a significant problem. It's an expensive problem because it can be jammed very cheaply, right? And then you can sometimes provide solutions that re-enable positioning. Um, so that's no longer a economic problem. Weird thought here is, with you talk about Silicon Valley a lot, with all these capabilities that keep coming out, getting evolved for um, semi AI involvement in lots of defense things, right? Trying. I don't believe anyone has hit the golden goose on that yet. Um, but with all this capability that theoretically could exist, but it would be super expensive, is there going to be an awesome market for lower tech, perhaps RF type stuff, that's less Silicon Valley and more, oh yeah, this has always worked. It's way more affordable. We can do this at scale. I don't know. The future battlefield is going to be really interesting. It's going to be either extreme tech or extremely low tech, and it seems like very little in between. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of think I kind of expect that we'll see both. I think we're going to see high
Yeah.
tech, but like I said, if the if the shift in doctrine is towards affordable mass, by definition, your most expensive, most exquisite things are not going to be affordable mass. But at the same time, if you have, I think the atomic bomb is a perfect example of one very expensive, very exquisite system which does overcome affordable mass. So it's not ever, I shouldn't say ever because it's a bit oxymoronic. It's very, very rarely the case where the right answer is the extreme end of one or both, or one or the other. Almost always your optimal solution is some balance in the middle. And so our job is to find, where that balance is. We do need to be putting research dollars into finding really high end new tech and exploring physics and figuring out, right now, certainly really interesting stuff going on at particle accelerators, figuring out things we don't know about time and gravity and really consequential stuff. Um, we aren't going to deploy that to the battlefield tomorrow, but that doesn't mean we should stop researching it. At the same time, let's pretend we need to go to the battlefield tomorrow. What are we going to do when we get there? And
Mhm.
so having the ability to fund, pie in the sky tech, but also having the ability to show up in mass,
Mm.
they're going to go hand in hand. And our job is just figure out what that balance needs to be, because of course the constraint is dollars and labor. So can only
Yep.
do so much.
That's a really cool opportunity. So as you guys are doing that, your next 6 to 12 months, right? From your business, I understand you do a lot of design and a lot of creation um, and engineering for your clients. For your business, next 6 to 12 months, what metrics are you guys focused on, or as you're steering the ship, basically, what metrics are you guys focused on for growth, improvement, or otherwise process development internally?
Yeah, it's a good question. Metrics is it's more of a, I think the position we're in, it's more readily described as gates. And the
Okay.
reason I say that is, we're not a large, a large company that's building X number of widgets and looking to try to expand markets and hit revenue numbers and things like that.
Hmm.
What we're trying to do is come up with new ideas that make sense in the 3 to 5 year from now world.
Hmm.
And the hard part about that is, everybody kicks around the term timing is everything. But they kick it around because it is. And so some of the best advice I ever got about trying to develop a new thing is it is a game of survival, right? So timing is everything, and you don't get to pick the timing, which means you need to be alive long enough that you are there when the timing is right. And so for us, that's it. So we need to continue to develop and continue to learn and build at a rate that we can live on. Because if we overextend and we, drown 6 months before the shift in the acquisitions world makes sense, that the right department decides to do distributed RF beacons for navigation, then it doesn't matter how smart we are, how much work we did, or how much we know about the right way to solve this. We're dead. So for bringing new tech to market, number one is obviously make a thing that works, but number two is stay alive. Stay alive long enough that you can, finish the job.
Hmm. No, that makes tons of sense. That's really good advice. Because you're right. You could drown yourself, and then 6 months later, it would have been perfect, but you have no way to know that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a bit backwards. People talk about in business taking shots on goal. Um,
Hmm.
in defense contracting, the government's the one taking the shots because they're the one issuing the contracts. They're the ones issuing the RFPs. And
Yeah.
so all you can do to take shots on goal is continue to be alive as those shots are taken against you.
Hmm.
The longer you
Oh man,
live, the more shots you have a chance at. It's simple as that.
it's such a different mind shift from a lot of other businesses in totally different markets where the problem is usually get more customers, get more sales, get more clients, outbound, you know, marketing, sales, all that kind of stuff. The whole opposite of that. It's amazing. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and of course, I do need to caveat. I'm speaking kind of in a very narrow world of early stage development stuff.
that's right.
Certainly later on, once you're in a kind of a procurement land, and you've crossed the proverbial valley of death, it's
Okay.
then I would say more standard rules apply.
Okay.
Um, I will caveat that this isn't just general advice for working with the government.
Yeah.
This is trying to bring a new idea into the fold that doesn't have a precedent yet. So
Sure. No, that is a super niche environment, but its rules are completely different. Yeah. I, I don't even know. They do not teach that in business school. I'll tell you
yeah, nope, they don't teach it in engineering school either.
that.
I've been really really fortunate to. I, in fact, the whole I was gonna name a few names, but the more I think about it, the whole community. The one thing that I would say that I really enjoy about waking up and going to work every day is, for the most part, people in this world, man, you don't come here for the money. Defense is hard. It's painful. It's time consuming. I'm sure the same problems exist in the commercial space, uh, or similar problems. But for the most part, the majority of people I get to work with every day are just here because we want to be. There's a great example. There's a government contracting chat group. It's a signal chat group that is sort of an invite only thing that I was fortunate enough to get invited to.
Hmm.
And it's really cool because it's people like me, it's industry executives from big defense companies, it's um, a lot of government folks, folks from the DARPA lab, folks from PEOs that are trying to figure out how to make the job that we all are collectively trying to accomplish actually happen, despite all the process that our industry has sort of adopted over the last few decades. So, uh, yeah, that was a long way of saying that I'm fortunate to get to work with people who want to be here.
Yeah, there's a good group of people that want to be there, and they're generally talking to each other. That's it's a good
Yep.
start to a valuable network in the genuinely valuable kind of way.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I think it's rare. So
sure.
it's a neat thing to see that despite the best effort, and I think actually more interestingly, I think it's something the public doesn't get to see. The
Hmm.
public sees the news releases about this program over budget, behind schedule, the failed test, this and that. What they don't see are the people literally chatting each other, government to industry at 1:30 in the morning, trying to figure out how to get these systems working or systems fielded or overcome a supply chain issue or whatever. Um, it's just cool to see.
Yeah. Okay. If you could change one thing today, either for your business or the industry that you serve, what would it be? One thing.
Yeah, it's a tough question because of course there's quite a long list. So I've never done
Go for it, man. It doesn't have to be
never,
one. Hit me.
never done the rack and stack on it.
You're good.
It's going to be a result of people simply caring about being more efficient with their money. And ultimately, I like to believe that being more efficient with your money means better returns, so it should be a win-win for you. But also, like we said earlier, if you're building out an industry, you have two limiting resources: money and labor, and time, I guess, but money and labor. And so, the more efficient we can be with the money part, then the better off the industry is going to be. I genuinely think that the country as a whole would be better if some of these private capital firms, especially some of the larger ones, did literally bare minimum technical due diligence to make sure that we're getting over just a basic bar of the types of ideas we should fund. So yeah, if I could change one thing, it would be I would like to add one checklist item to every deal that is did a reasonably competent person confirm this is technically feasible? That's it. Yes, continue. Uh, you know, whatever. Spend your money how you want to. But if it's no, please don't. Please don't keep barreling money into it. Go put it somewhere where it could go to work and actually, you know, produce something one day.
That's a solid thing to change for your market. If you could change anything for thin air, your business, in the snap of a finger today, what would it be?
Let's see.
I know that's difficult to rack and stack because there's always going to be too many things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's going to change. One week it's more contracts, and then the next week it's less contracts. So, um,
That's a
yeah,
kind of a good problem to have, I guess.
well, it's always a good problem to have. But I think trying to trying to think, more generally. Come back to that one. I,
Okay,
I don't
no
I don't
worries.
have a I don't have an answer worth. I don't have a other than the usual answers. So let me think about it a minute.
The usual answer? Yeah, I got
Yeah.
you. I got you. So I did some digging the other day, and I found one of the things I just appreciate about after we spoke the other day, how you think and how you present yourself and your company. I thought it was pretty clever because on a LinkedIn profile, it's either yours or your company. I can't remember which one, but it said like a few patents, a few world records, and an acquisition. but no one cares what you did yesterday. That was so understated. So in a world of social media, I'm not really calling LinkedIn that. That's not the environment, but the rest of social media that I've seen, there's so much of a trend towards, and this is a trend, towards uh, bravado and give me attention and look how impressive I am and look at all this stuff or look what my company just accomplished and a whole bunch of basically ego-driven stuff, right? It's out there. If you want to look for it, just pull up any social media you want to, you'll find it. It's everywhere. You can't escape it. But the thing that I personally respect is when people are understated, and if they're competent, you'll know, you'll figure it out. Like they don't have to prove it to anyone, and they're not basically hunting validation from the internet. And so I saw that and I wanted to call that out. Hey man, that's my kind of people. I appreciate that. It's understated, it's competent, but it's quiet, and you'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and I couldn't agree with you more. I think LinkedIn is possibly the most egregious offender of look how cool I am, um, and so it's that weird balance, right? Of two parts of talking about what you've done is one, in a world where there's a ton more information and ton more networking available,
Hmm.
um, people do want to know who you are. Where'd you come from? What are you about? It's not enough to say, this is my face, and I like airplanes or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think you do have to do kind of the classic, not sell yourself, but just who are you? What are you about?
Mm.
And then the other piece of it is just being proud of the work you've done. You know, I'm super proud of the work that we've gotten to do, and super proud of the people that I've gotten to do it with, and the things that have been accomplished. And so it's nice to be able to kind of just provide a nod to that. Um, but but yeah, nobody cares what you did yesterday. They, I mean, think if your goal is to spend the next decade talking about this cool thing you did a decade ago,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, but I think we need to build new stuff. So look forward.
Yeah, that's the has been baseball dad. You know what I mean? Like, wait,
Yeah.
well, when I was your age, that kind of story.
Back
Awesome.
in '89 when we went to the championships.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what did you do today?
Yeah,
But I think that's super important, especially for a smaller business that's agile and stuff like that, right? Is that same mentality comes to thin air nav because um yeah, you're right. Great, you got that contract last month. You did the thing last year. You served something I'm making something up here in Syria this one time. You know what I mean? It helped. Cool, great, awesome. You can't rest on your laurels at all, um, or you're just going to be eaten by everyone else. I think that ego, the moment that a company gets the ego to rest on itself and think that it's good to go now and safe, it's not. That is the moment that begins to die. I don't know. What's your thought on that?
100%. And I'm a big believer in a company is its leadership, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times, unfortunately, what you see is you meet people. I'm going to pick on a specific example and try not to get too specific. You meet people who have accomplished one or maybe two really extraordinary things, and everybody knows them because of that. And there's almost this sense of I pulled off this cool thing, and so you should pay me for it. The analogy I like to use is the Miracle on the Hudson, Captain Sullenberger, right? Sully. So Sully pulled off an incredible feat, right? But imagine if Sully went back to the airlines and said, "That thing I did that was really cool, you should just keep paying me for the fact that I did that." Like, nobody's trying to take away the fact that you accomplished something extraordinary, but that doesn't mean anything for tomorrow. Like, nice job. But yeah, there's a lot of that in the industry. It's tied to a program or a really cool mission or something somebody did, and there's sort of this expectation you're just gonna show up and get paid for this thing you did before. And the part that kills me the most about it is not even that it's an ego thing or an expectation of something that somebody doesn't deserve, but those people tend to just shut their brain off
Mhm.
of, what do I need to do next? There's almost this mentality where the world has sort of told them that you're done. You crossed your finish line, you accomplished the thing you set out to do. We don't need anything more from you. And not all of them, certainly, but some of them tend to just really, um, you know, kind of like you said, they rest on those laurels. And it's frustrating because now you have a great name, a great capability, a ton of experience, and it's not being put to use. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So anyway, that's
Well, yeah,
yeah,
they think they've made it, and if whatever made it means, I guess in mafia terms from all these mafia movies, that they're made man now. They did the thing. Like you're good. Like there is no good. Like you
and I guess in a lot of senses they have, right? Like if you want to retire, you could. Let's keep picking on Sully.
sure
Um,
go for
if if you're Sully and you want to retire, you can, right?
it. Yeah.
Because now you can go write a book, you can go on
Mhm.
Oprah, you get paid, and you're gonna be fine. You don't have to keep working. But if you are gonna keep working, you can't just show up to work the next day and say, "Hey, I'm here. We're gonna keep doing this," except for not me, because I landed the airplane on the river yesterday, so I'm done. You guys all pull your weight. I did mine. That doesn't make sense. But that's what we get. That's what we get in this industry. I'm speaking for this industry because it's the one I know. I suspect it's probably find it across the world.
Mhm.
But yeah, yeah, it's a bit frustrating. If you're gonna show up, show up. Don't care what you did yesterday.
Well, I'm guessing on a personal note too, if the people do care about what they did yesterday and rest on those laurels and that kind of stuff, whether it's for the company or for themselves, I'm guessing based on a couple of personal anecdotes of listening to people say the same thing a lot over and over and over. That's how you become the very old guy eventually who tells the same story 400 times. And everyone who loves you, your wife, any kids you may have, like your family members and your friends, are like, okay, he's going to talk about that again. So,
You landed an airplane on the water. We get it.
ooh. It is a cool story the first
It's
12
super
times.
cool. It's
Yeah.
super cool. And it's an easy one to pick on because, obviously it's extraordinary and what he did was awesome. Hope I get to meet that guy someday. It's a really I think it's just the perfect example of the type of thing that you see in more subtle fashion across our industry. Not not to fire shots, but a lot of times people are taking credit for an accomplishment as in a way that kind of portrays that they believe that they're the only one that could have done it when in fact they were just the only one standing there when it happened. It again, a bit shots fired.
Yeah.
And there are certain examples I can think of. An example of one program which absolutely knocked it out of the park. Extraordinary success across the board. Went on to become a big deal. And the guy who was in charge of it had been put in charge of it weeks prior to this takeoff, and um, for lack of a better term, just kind of rode that wave up. But
Hmm.
then because his name was associated with this meteoric rise of this program, um, it just sort of became legend. And he decided that, look at the scoreboard that that my team accomplished. Technically true. Uh, but hey, man, not to be whatever, but any reasonably competent person put in that position as that program took off because of external events in the world. Uh,
Hmm. Yep. The dev team had been doing it the whole time before you got there. And the positioning happened to manifest in the world
yeah,
at that exact moment.
yeah,
You were
they were.
there. Cool.
Yeah, you didn't predict 9/11 was going to happen and go get that job just in time. Now it's
No.
so again, I want to give credit where it's due, but that
Yeah.
works both ways. If you're taking credit that maybe was circumstantial more than your divine wisdom and intervention, um, you know, maybe maybe have a little more self-awareness.
Appreciate that. Man, thanks for jumping on here today and sharing some insights. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing, man. It's fun chatting.